The class differences in the 18th century were so apparent immediately. If you walk out of your house into the street, it is in the clothing, it is in the speech patterns and the words that are used. You can tell immediately if somebody is educated or if they're not educated, and it is also in the food they eat. That is one of the easiest ways to see the differences in classes is in food. And it's not always about the ingredients that they're eating, but how they're prepared and how they are coming to the table. This recipe will showcase that for you today. If a poor person or a lower middle class person is gonna get some street food, say potato soup, that's a really good example of a street food from this time period. You're gonna take like a whole hog's head or a big cut of beef that is not really great for cooking, but is good for making a broth. And that is going to be in a pot and it's gonna boil with some potatoes and you're gonna have potato soup that way. Now, at the other end of the spectrum, if you're going to use those same things at a high class table, you might have a pork loin or a beautiful roasted piece of beef next to some potatoes with cream and butter, something like what we would call mashed potatoes. They are the same ingredients, but they're worlds apart as far as the quality of those ingredients and the quality of the cuts and how they are presented at the table. There are private chefs, and a lot of well-to-do people now have private chefs. But in our time period, chefs didn't work at restaurants. Chefs worked in homes that were abbeys, or there were big homes that had a staff of 30 or 40 people that waited on the family and that were employed there, or they worked in castles or something like that. That's where the chefs were working, not in restaurants. There were no fine dining places that people were going to have this beautiful 7-course dinner and this experience. That wasn't in existence in the time period. If so, in Europe, in very small kind of pockets. But by and large, chefs were working for people in their homes, and cookbooks were by and for chefs. That's where they belonged. Another one of the main differences about poor food or lower middle class food and high class food is the presentation. Sometimes if you're the poorest of the poor, you might just be eating a potato. You might just be eating a rutabaga or some kind of a root vegetable, and that's all that you have. Now in the high class, it's almost like this surprising amount of excess, right? It's almost like showing off. So they're using cream in multiple components of the dish, or they're using lots of eggs, lots of butter, lots of sugar, all of these things. And so when they use that and they want it to be this kind of showpiece, well, then they have to figure out how to deliver that to the table, which is oftentimes an instruction in these cookbooks so that it has some kind of a wow factor, which is something the poor people are not concerned about, a wow factor. So a big thing that was happening in cooking in the time period was to make a dish that looks like something else. This dish in particular is called a hedgehog. Now we've done things on the channel like fish pie, where it is a big pie that is a seafood pie, but it actually looks like a fish. They wanted a wow factor in a presentation like that. This dish screams of that. Now it's really interesting because this dish was so popular, and we see this in cookbooks that are meant for middle class. But in the beginning, this dish was only meant for the richest of the rich, and it was meant to come to the table and like your guests would drop their jaw and be impressed. This recipe today comes from England's Newest Way by Henry Howard. It was a very popular cookbook in the time period, and it helped a lot of households get into finer dining. To make a hedgehog, blanch and beat a pound of almonds very fine with a spoonful of sack or orange flower water to keep them from oiling. Make it into a stiff paste, then beat 6 eggs and put 2 whites, sweeten it with fine sugar, then put in half a munchkin of cream and 1/4 pound of beet butter. Set it on your stove and keep it stirring until it is stiff, that you may make it into the shape of a hedgehog. Then stick it full of blanched almonds cut in straws. Set them in it like bristles, with 2 currants plumped for eyes. Then place it in the middle of the dish and boil some cream. Put in it the yolks of 2 eggs and sweeten it to your taste. Put it on a slow fire, and when it is scalding hot, take it off. You must keep stirring all the while. When it's cold, put it about the hedgehog. So the first thing that we're gonna do is take our raw almonds and we're gonna put it in the water and blanch them. That will only take 30 seconds to a minute. After that, you're cooking them. You don't wanna do that. Get them out of there and get them strained and dried off. What I want to do here is actually put them in something and then pour more cold water on top of them just to cool them down and stop that cooking process. After those are finished, we're gonna remove the skins from all of those almonds, and we need the full pound, so just keep going through the skins, get your kids involved, shoot some almonds at them, it's a lot of fun. At that point, we're gonna get them on a cutting board and just kind of chop them up. It's just kind of like a chunky chop, because we want to get them to the next step, which is to get them into a mortar and pestle. That's when we'll add our sack or our wine, and we're just going to keep pulverizing these guys until it turns into somewhat of a paste. If you grab it in your hand and you push it together, it will hold together, and that's what we're looking for. At this point, we're gonna add the rest of our ingredients. So we're gonna get the cream, and we're gonna get the butter and the eggs and the sugar. Now, the eggs in this particular recipe, it says to add 6 eggs and 2 whites. But this recipe is repeated in a lot of cookbooks, and all of the other ones that I can find say 6 yolks and 2 whites. So really what we're doing is we're adding 4 egg yolks and 2 whole eggs. And we're gonna stir all of that together, and it's gonna be very loose, and get that on to a hot fire. And just stir that constantly, and it will not take long. And it feels like at first this is not going to come up into something that's stiff, but it does. All of that is gonna caramelize together. It's gonna turn into a nice little paste. Okay, once it gets thick, you can pull it out and you can mold it like this and make your hedgehog. Next, what you're going to do is get your cream, your egg yolks, and your sugar combined, and you're just gonna stir that over a hot flame until it thickens up. You know when your cream is finished by when you can hold up the spoon and you can draw a line with your finger and it stays separated. It doesn't go together. That means your cream's thick enough. So that's our indicator. It's ready to go. What happens kind of late 18th century, people like Hannah Glass and Eliza Smith come along, and they want to say, okay, we want to take this cookbook, these secrets that have only been for chefs, and we want to broaden the amount of people that can get them. Now, those books would have been expensive, but if you could get one of those books, then all of those secrets are yours. And these people that were coming up into the lower middle class, and the middle class is starting to emerge, they can now cook those dishes. And what's interesting is the understanding in those cookbooks was, here's the best of the best. You can have this recipe, but then they would have a cheaper version, or a version without eggs, or a version without cream. Understanding that just because you got your hands on this cookbook doesn't mean that you have the ability to use everything that those recipes might call for. So they can get you almost there if that's all you can afford, and you can still experience these finer dinings in your own home for the first time ever. Look at that. That's neat. Well, no matter who you are, that's cute. It looks like a hedgehog. When you come across it in the book and there aren't any pictures and it's hard to envision and it's just like to make a hedgehog, you're like, what the heck is this? And then it comes together like this. It looks wonderful. I think that the idea here is that if you only get almonds, it's gonna be too dry. So make sure I got some custard, I got some almonds. It tastes great, the texture is weird. It's kind of gritty, but man, it tastes good. I mean, okay, so almonds already have some sweetness to them. You've added that sweetness. It kind of holds together, it kind of breaks apart. It's a little texture weird, but the taste is awesome. The custard is a perfect thing to marry that kind of woodsiness that an almond has. I think it tastes wonderful. I think that this is a really beautiful dish that you can make at home. It's really easy, it takes some time, do it as a family. And what a great study on how food that is fine, because this was fine dining in our time period, has become available to all of us over time. And so even now, I mean, I'm glad that everything is not organized where chefs and high-level cooking is only done in private homes. I'm glad that I can save up some money and take my wife out to a nice meal at a nice restaurant. I think that's really wonderful. But looking at this dish and seeing that study come together is really fascinating.